fans, with head coach Jean-Guy Trudel. I'm Andrew Mossbrooks. This is Trudel's Weekly Take, presented by our good friends at Health Alliance. We're going to do this every week, and it's the week after opening night where you get an overtime win. And, Coach, we talked about it a little bit on the post-game show. You're happy with the win, but certainly some other adjustments need to be made.
Yeah, that's for sure. And, when you do it for 7 years, you kind of, the first game, you know what's coming. You still want I always say, you want March details in October, and it's never going to happen. Those habits, those details takes a while to come. I saw enough good to be happy, especially with the win in overtime.
Right.
But I saw enough bad that we know we have a lot of work ahead of us.
What about the details specifically? I don't want to keep you here all day with that because I know you're a hyper-detailed guy and you examine every play as you should. But can you just tell me, what are some of the details that were there? What are some of the ones that weren't?
I think the effort was there. I think a lot of it has to do with conditioning also. We were not conditioned to play the way we want to play, which is a fast-paced, high-pressure type of game. And the details that we're missing to me the most is all our reloads, our recovers, our pressure and recover, we call them. And not only offensive zone, but defensive zone, defensive zone. I don't think we were kind of meshing as a unit. If we had one guy working, we had two guys watching. So nobody was really working as a unit, and we called those pressure, recover, and it just wasn't there. And understandably so, like I said, it's the first game, a lot of new faces in the last 3 days before the game actually happened. So a lot of guys are still not on the same program, which is completely understandable, but I saw enough I call them competitors, that you can do something with what we have right now.
Well, you talk about a couple of guys coming in late right there at the end of camp, and then you bring a couple guys in after this opening night game. So let's talk about that a little bit. One of them, hopefully you won't have to talk a whole lot about details. He was here for the entirety of training camp, Zach Nieminen, but then also Connor Fry's coming in. Here's another young kid you're getting out of an NCAA D3 program at New England College. First, let's stay on Nieminen. What makes you bring Nemo back to the Rivermen?
In camp, I thought he did well. I think Nemo, we had a good talk, even when he left. His boots, we got to work on his feet. I mean, he's very high IQ, but sometimes when your feet are not there, you can't get in the right spots like you want all the time. So he came back, and he's like, we're going to work at it, coach, and he's got a great attitude. He's a great kid. So for me, we our first part of our culture is always bringing good people in. So he's got that part. He's a competitor. Unfortunately, with his boots, sometimes he doesn't get there to compete the way we want him to. So that's what we're going to keep working with Nemo, just getting up to speed of what I want of Peoria, what we do here in Peoria. When it comes to Connor, I heard great things about, he was in in Evansville in camp, and he had a good camp, and then he went to the Federal League just for 1 or 2 games, and the coach called me, and he's like, you're going to love this kid, and he's a high IQ guy. Again, a little bit smaller body, but very high IQ, and even today after practice, he's there like on our second quick, on our reloads, on our recover, so that's kind of what we want, those little water bugs that are always helping or always in somebody's way. So we're eliminating space and taking space all over the place.
Maybe this goes off on a separate footnote, but you talk about how you get Fries through a coach that knew you, that reached out to you. So much of it, I often hear it, hockey is a contact sport, but more than just on the ice. And obviously you had a long playing career, but talk about those relationships that help you build these winning teams year after year after year, because you can't scout everybody in the United States and beyond, but you somehow seasonally end up getting all these great guys here. Talk about your relationships outside of Peoria.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, relationships are everything. So you have some closer ones, of course, that every year seems like I get 1 or 2 players from certain guys, and then even agent relationships. All those things come in play. And as coaches, you're this big group of coaches all over the place, and you compete when the game is going on. But when the game is over, we're all trying. We're all in the same kind of type of job, so we're trying to help each other as much as we can, because you never know. You never burn a bridge. You never know what's going to happen. So those relationships are absolutely key. Without all my relationships, it'd be very hard to build a team. So you're absolutely right on that. We keep building them, and even today I'm working on certain things. You always have. I always say you have lines in the water all over the place. You always want to get better as a team, and you start trusting certain people. Those relationships, what they're telling you about a certain kid is exactly what he is, so you don't have to watch 7-8 hours of film and try to find film. So it's really nice to have all those contacts, that's for sure.
Speaking of film, I know it's been a few days since opening night. You've had a chance to look at some stuff. I mean, how much on average, I don't know if you do it more on opening night or in the earlier games and the later games in the season, but how many hours are you spending just rewatching games and looking at everything?
Oh, well, it's our job, So
Right.
yesterday, a good 6-7 hours on just our game, because I always say I cut for myself, then I cut for team. So whatever meetings we have, like every save with the goalie, and then defenseman, and then I have my 10 points I always cut on. So I cut the first part for me, then I cut the second part for my 10 points, and kind of put it all together. And when you don't have an assistant coach, it takes a while. And then today is my day to attack. I call it the pre-scout. So we're going to start watching Evansville. We're playing Evansville, so we're going to start watching the 2 games of Evansville. During the season, I like to go about 3 games back.
Okay.
But right now, we only have 2 games for Evansville to watch, so we're going to watch them. And they're a new coach or new team. I got to watch everything. But again, when I cut my tape, I cut it within my 10 really important things. 2 are special team, and 8 are different ones, 4 offense, 4 defense. And you try to make your videos as fast as you can, because the players, after 12 minutes, they don't listen to you anymore. So it's hard for me because I love the game.
That's today's era, short attention span.
I love the game, and I wish we could,
Yep.
I love being in there. But yeah, I'm trying to cut everything under 12 minutes right now, so it's hard.
It's funny, and it's hard when you don't have an assistant coach like you mentioned. Now, we get a chance sometimes, I'll sit up here in the stands and watch you guys run a practice, and earlier today I see you having more of a conversation with Dave Nippard, more of an in-depth conversation at the end of practice with some of your D. How hard is it to manage all that? And then earlier in the day, you're doing video with goaltenders. I mean, to manage the goalies, the defense, the forwards, how do you balance it out?
Well, I think the older you get, I think what's important is actually having a set schedule on everything. When you have that, when you're organized, and my first few years, I won't lie to you, I was not organized. When you're organized, it seems like everything falls in place. And yes, it takes a lot more hours, but like today, we had a plan for absolutely everything we're going to do today. When it comes to coaching on the ice, I'll stop practice a lot, which I know I shouldn't be doing all the time, but being a year, you have to. It's always about doing the right things. Even if sometimes it's only 2 feet with a bad stick or 4 feet different, you have to explain to the guys. So we make sure, because, all those little aspects. I said the only reason we won the game for me on Saturday was Eric Levine played well, and our special teams were good.
Yeah.
And that's it. But if we wouldn't have practiced those special teams for 4 or 5 days before every single day, we might have lost the game. So that's the difference. That's why you see in practice a lot of explanation. We want to be perfect in every way in our 10 sections that we talk about all the time.
In the beginning of the year when we talked to you, and I know our good friend David Minion at the Peoria Journal-Star brought up how in the paper you view this as almost a total rebuild from last year with all the new faces that are in here. Not only new, but young. I mean, a lot of kids, 22-year-old, 23-year-olds, a lot of 24-year-olds on this team. Is this one of the youngest teams you've coached in the Rivermen SPHL era?
Well, I told Dave, this reminds me a little bit of my first year, to be honest with you, because as much as, we had Dion Carvalho come back that played for me, and Mitch, the rest of the guys are completely new. And even if they're not rookies, within what we do, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but within what we do here in Peoria, whatever they did in different teams is different systems, different details. So whatever we do in Peoria, they're really rookies. So we have a lot of new faces. So that's why I told you the other day, I think we're at 35-40% of actually doing the details right. Like there's a lot more to come. And it's not their fault. They're just, we're just with a new organization, new details, new ways of doing things. And I like to have those conversations with my players, what you guys did last year and why not you don't understand this part or that part. And we talk, and that's how you get better. Just communication on the ice, off the ice, to make sure everybody's on the same page. I
know pro hockey is different than junior hockey, but anybody that knows you and the community involvement the Rivermen have knows that you're big with the NA3HL, the Peoria Mustangs. And I want to ask that because, again, it's different. But at the same time, it's a lot of kids, a lot of young kids that you're dealing with and trying to coach and get through the ebbs and flows. Is there any similarity to that here at the SPHL level, especially this season, with all the new guys that are also very young?
You laugh, but I have that conversation with Steve Ortman, which is my good friend, and he coaches the Mustangs with me.
Yeah.
And I always say these guys are the same. They're just bigger and older. You know what I mean? And it's not
this year they're not that much older.
No, it's not a knock on them. It's just like I said, you come from different places. You have to put it all together, and it takes a while. That's why, this year I feel like I have a little bit more patience when it comes to details. I'm still really hard when it comes to our culture or our competitors. I want competitors. I want guys that work every single day the right way.
Right.
But at details, I'm a little bit more patient this year because it is a little bit like the Mustangs. A lot of new guys coming in, a lot of young guys. You have to teach. It seems like from A to Z. You can't start at C. You can't start at D.
Yeah.
So you just start from the beginning, and it's fun though. It's a great process to see them grow. Even our Rivermen here, I mean, we're seeing a process that in the last week, I feel like they're a way better hockey team already. And I deal with the same thing with my youth hockey also. I'm director of hockey and youth hockey, and I see the same thing. You know, you have young kids, and you try to mold in within the details you think. It's not the right details all the time, but what we think is, you know, brings us a lot of success. So you're right. It's kind of every level is the same, just a little bit more talent, a little bit faster, a little bit bigger here.
Do you think it requires any more pressure on the leadership group here? You know, not just Alec Hageman, but also your assistants, now your alternate captains, and Eric Levine. Does it put more pressure on those guys to help the youth?
No. They know their roles. They're phenomenal leaders, phenomenal leadership group that they know how to attack every day. They don't put extra pressure on them. We have good conversation about what I expect and they're all old enough, they've been with me long enough that they know what's needed to be done. And they all have a different type of leadership, which is fun. You know what, Jordan Carvalho's the quiet one, but he does everything right on the ice, and he's a motor that never stops, you know. And then you have a little bit louder guys, and you have a Hageman that's becoming like a teacher. You can see him every drill, he's talking to somebody. So they all do something really special for our team, and but I don't think they feel pressure at all. I think we have a great group, and they're happy to be here, and they know exactly what they're supposed to do.
Last question before I let you go. Evansville Thunderbolts, Saturday. I know you mentioned you haven't had a chance to maybe dive in too much into their video, but they're 1-1 going in. They had a really tough year in the 18-19 season. Any expectations going in, maybe not for Evansville, but for your team, and what's going to be different this week versus how you played against Quad City?
They're a very good team. And one thing about Jeff Bess is, to me, he's probably one of the best recruiters that we've had in our league. Like, he always finds a way to recruit great players. They're always very talented. He always has great goaltending. And they're always really hard to beat. I had a chance to watch 2 periods of their first game. That's what we were doing before we got here, and they're a very good hockey team. They could, you know, easily be 2-0 right now with what I saw on tape, and so it's going to be a challenge. They're not the Evansville from last year. Their forwards are extremely fast and talented. I think their D, I think they need a little seasoning, and we had the conversation with Jeff about that. But you'll see a different Evansville. They're fast, they're good, and I love it because we play them a lot. I love playing good teams all the time.
Yep.
I think even Quad City, they got 5-6 new faces that are really good hockey players. So it's going to be a lot of fun playing those guys, and Jeff always brings it. He's a competitor. He wants his team to be ready, and, you know, we have this little rivalry here, it seems like, with us, Evansville and Quad City. So it's going to be a lot of fun on Saturday, and I know they're going to be prepared. I know they're a good team.
And then we're going to see them Tuesday morning in Evansville for our first road game of the season. But first, it is this Saturday, 7:15 puck drop right here inside Carver Arena at the Peoria Civic Center. For now, that's going to do it here on the first edition of Trudel's Weekly Take, presented by Health Alliance. Coach Trudel, I appreciate the time.
Andrew, always a pleasure, buddy.